Welcome to 3 Ps in a Pod, your podcast about pediatrics, parenting, and the perimenopause. And the last episode was on symptoms and signs and biology behind the perimenopause. And today we're going to talk a little bit about managing the perimenopausal mayhem, the peri, as we say. My name is Claudia Gray. I'm a pediatrician. I'm a mother of 4, and I'm a perimenopausal lady.
I am Christy Herselman, founder of The Chat, mom to 3 amazing teenagers, and it is my privilege to host 3 Ps in a Pod with the amazing Dr. Claudia Gray. So thank you for joining us. If you didn't listen to the episode before this, please go back and have a listen, because we spoke about just what it feels like to go through perimenopause, some of the health things around that. And this episode is a follow-on from last episode. And today we are going to talk about how do we manage this time in our lives, and not just to survive it, but to thrive, because we really do want to thrive at every season of our lives, even the challenging times. And so thank you, Claudia. I am very excited about this conversation, but can you talk us through some of the principles of managing this time in our lives?
Yeah. So the first thing to say is that management does need to be individualized. It's not a one-size-fits-all, as a lot of our influencers will have you know. It needs to be based on each woman, their symptoms, their medical background, their body composition, their level of fitness, pre-existing health conditions, family risk factors, etc. Because first of all, we need to know things like, are they safe to exercise? Can they take hormone replacement therapy or menopausal hormone therapy, as it's called these days? Management is based on sort of 3 pillars. The first is lifestyle management, which we're going to talk about in depth today. Then it's hormone therapy, which we're not going to talk about further. It's absolutely fantastic, but we're going to spend a whole episode talking to a gynecologist about menopausal hormone replacement therapy. And then, of course, you'd have your non-hormone drug therapy. If you have aches and pains, you might need non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. If you have osteoporosis, you might need calcium and vitamin D. If you have very bad hot flashes, you might need specific other medical treatment from your physician. So, yeah, I think that we really should focus on lifestyle changes, which ease the burden and the consequences of your reduction in estrogen in this podcast.
Claudia, taking a pill sounds a lot easier. Can I not just replace the hormones, take the pills, and move on? Lifestyle changes, that sounds like a lot of work. Is it really worth it? Is it really necessary?
Yeah, Christy, like most good things in life, they do take a little bit of work, and there is no pill that replaces lifestyle. So replacement therapy will go a long way in easing some of the symptoms, but it's not going to reverse some of the ill effects of the perimenopause and the menopause. So you can actually totally reinvent yourself from the inside out during this time. But it requires adhering to our 4 main pillars of health, which are diet, exercise, sleep, and community or emotional well-being. And we'll talk about all of these briefly. I think they all need an episode in themselves, actually. But that, together with obviously reducing your caffeine intake, quitting bad habits like smoking, not drinking excessive alcohol, practicing stress reduction. But apart from that, is really focusing on the 4 pillars.
I love that. I love those 4 pillars: diet, exercise, sleep, and community. Those feel like really important things. Let's start with diet. You know, I can't eat what I used to eat. My metabolism is nowhere near what it used to be. How do I adapt my diet? What do I need to change in this phase of life?
Yeah, this really is the phase where the woman feels like she eats an additional lettuce leaf and she gains 2 kilograms, which is not even physiologically feasible, but it really feels like it. So I have a couple of sneaky principles for your food intake during the perimenopause, because it is unfortunately true that our metabolic rate reduces and we become more insulin resistant, etc. So we need to adapt. First of all, focus on real food. This is a really good time to eat as much that's as close to nature as possible. Nature always knows best. Processed food needs to be limited. It's not completely realistic to limit all processed foods, but remember that processed foods are often nutritionally quite poor. Okay. They take away your appetite for the nutritionally good stuff, and also they're very pro-inflammatory.
Okay.
And a lot of the consequences of perimenopause and menopause are inflammation that's unchecked, leading to increased risks of your health and well-being just not being optimal. So anything that's pro-inflammatory, stress, etc. But in this case, in nutrition, your refined processed foods should be limited. And that brings me to refined sugar. So, added sugar, I'm not talking about the natural lactose in milk or a bit of fructose in fruit. We're talking about sucrose, added, highly processed, refined sugar. So the limit for women at all ages is 25 grams a day, which means if you have a can of Coke, you've already exceeded your limit by far.
Really?
So it's getting into the habit of starting to look at little bits and pieces and treats and saying, gosh, how much refined sugar is in here? And trying to reduce it to less than 10 grams per helping, which means if you're desperate for a chocolate, you're going to have to eat one of those little mini chocolates to get 10 grams or less, because your entire day can actually only handle 25 grams to maintain a good sugar homeostasis. Pep up the protein. So this is a time in life we don't need to go overboard like all our influencers are saying. We need 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight a day of good whole protein, which usually means having protein at every meal, but focusing on the fact that we need protein with every meal. So if one weighs 50 kilograms, then it would mean 60 to 80 grams of protein per 24-hour period. Okay. Important to say is not to omit any food groups. So don't go carb free. I mean, it's not sustainable. Any dietary changes you make need to be doable and sustainable. So have all your food groups, but maybe decrease the carbs, increase the veggies, increase your protein, reduce the processed foods, and focus on fiber. So more and more we are learning about the importance of this microbiome of ours, and it's fed by fiber. So the more fiber you have, the more healthy your gut is, the more healthy your body is. So we really need to increase our intake of whole wheat products, fruits and veggies with their skin on, things like flaxseed powder, etc. And don't over-restrict your diet. This is a problem I've seen in myself. If I go through periods of not eating enough because I think, I can't eat enough because my metabolism is like, a snail, then your body adapts and it needs less.
Okay.
So at some stage of the perimenopause, we need to adapt the composition of our diet, maybe a little bit the caloric intake, but not so drastically that your body senses it as famine.
Okay.
Because if it sees, she's in a famine, you adapt and your metabolic rate goes lower. So those are sort of the dietary principles in the perimenopause.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It reminds me so much of episodes when we talk about children's diet, about the balance, but it's just about the numbers are changing a bit, about what we should allow in. And I'm so glad I'm allowed a little chocky every now and again, because honestly, we need it for our emotional well-being as well as anything else.
What's life without a piece of cake?
I know.
So it's all about having it in perspective and in moderation.
Okay. And what about supplements? There seems to be so many. I go into any store and there's just so many supplements for women going through menopause, perimenopause. Do I need these?
Yeah, and it's such a money-making business, isn't it, Christy? I mean, I'm sure they earn a lot more than the really sincere practitioners. There is so much out there, and it needs to be individualized once again. So, for example, if you've got someone who is on a vegetarian diet, they might need an iron supplement. You can measure iron, you can measure vitamin D, etc. But there are some supplements which really have stood out as being potentially beneficial in the perimenopause, and those are vitamin D, especially if your sun exposure is reduced, omegas, the fatty acids in the right ratio of omega-3 and omega-6, magnesium glycinate or glycinate, which should be taken at night because it can make you quite relaxed, and creatine. So creatine we originally, just associate with bodybuilders and muscle strength, but it's been shown to be good for brain health, but not at huge doses, 3 to 5 grams per day. And it's supposedly especially important at this age. I've tried it, I've stopped it because it made me feel bloated, and it does draw water into your muscles temporarily. Okay. So I need to get myself to try again and just work through that stage where I feel like a little bit of a hippo for a few days.
Well, that sounds like an episode in itself. It's something I'd love to talk about because, with 2 young athletes in my house, we talk about creatine a lot and we've researched it, but always with the focus on young athletes. So I'd love to know the impacts of that and other supplements on us going through menopause. But let's move on to exercise. This is a time where time is so short, and exercise is often the first thing that we sacrifice, our own exercise, because a lot of the time we don't even feel like exercising. And so it's an easy thing to just not do.
Christy, it is, but exercise is hands down the best medicine in all the medications we have, including fancy schmancy pancy peptides, etc. It is the one with the most evidence for longevity and health span. It is absolutely vital during the perimenopause because of these composition changes that take place in our fat and our bones and our muscles, and for your brain health. It's vital to maintain strength. You want to be functional as you grow older. It's vital to maintain balance. You don't want to be falling all over the show. Motility, independence, it protects us from falls. So exercise really is a poly pill. It's your ultimate medicine. We always want to grab the medications with a quick fix, but actually exercise is probably the most impressive of all the interventions that have come out. And, I kind of mentioned already that we need a few different types. We need some cardiovascular, so brisk walking, slow jogging, cycling. It doesn't need, to be joint bolting exercise. You can walk fast, hold a conversation, but walk fast. We need 150 minutes a week. Okay, so that's 30 minutes, 5 times a week. That can be brisk walking, as I said. But then strength. Now we have to strength train. So 2 or 3 times a week, we have to lift weights. We have to lift them to fatigue. Whole episode in itself. Strong is the new skinny. We don't want to be skinny during the perimenopause. We want to be strong. Skinny is bad. Skinny means your muscles and your bones are wasting away.
Okay.
So we talked about strength training. And then with that, if you can do a day, 1 session a week of a bit of flexibility to maintain, especially your hip joints, and some balance. They always say brush your teeth standing on one leg, because balance does deteriorate after this time.
Wow. I must say, even I've really been intentional about exercising this year. And even last week, there was one morning where I literally had my exercise clothes on, and I was completely talking myself out of going for a run. Because, with children in school, you have to go early. And eventually I was like, I'm going for a run. And I went for a quick run. It was nothing to write home about. And when I got home, my dog was always waiting at the gate. So I took him across the road onto the beach. I watched this magnificent sunrise while he dug for crabs. And I got home, and not only was I so happy to have exercised, I felt so much better.
So much better.
I felt so much ready to face the day. I felt so positive. And so I feel like exercise is not just about my body, it's also about my mind.
Hundreds, but you also, you're very good at your early morning exercise. It doesn't suit some people. It may not fit into your life. So if the influencers say you have to exercise first thing in the morning, it's not necessarily true.
Yes.
It might be, you might have more energy in the evening. You might have your most productive time in the mornings where you want to graft, where you want to work as soon as you've dropped the kids. And then you exercise in the late afternoon or at lunchtime. So it needs to be adapted to every single person.
What works for you. And I think, as you said, it's not a one size fits all. It's what works for us. It might be a walk at lunchtime, with a friend or something like that.
Exactly.
And so one thing that I have experienced, and so many of my friends are talking about, is the impact on our sleep.
Yeah.
A lot of us are waking up at 3 a.m., battling to get back to sleep. Can I survive on less sleep? Is this just a normal shift?
It feels like it should be. We always think, the elderly don't sleep well. They don't need as much sleep. But ironically, we do, because sleep is our time of repair, and sleep is our time of memory imprintation, and sleep is our time of rest, and more than ever, we need this. So studies have shown that we need 7 up till 9 hours of sleep a night. Your mortality, your all-cause mortality, how soon you're going to die, is higher if you sleep less than 7 hours, and is higher if you sleep more than 9 hours. Interesting.
Yeah. So don't sleep too much.
Don't sleep too much. I mean, except if you're a teenager, because then you grow and you're using all your sleep to grow. So within the sleep, we need all our sleep cycles: deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep when we're dreaming. And we really are doing a lot in our brains and in our muscles while we are sleeping. What we need to remember, especially during this time, is our natural sleep disruptors. So not only is age a natural sleep disruptor, but pain, have that well controlled. If you think you've got a sleep disorder of sorts, have that seen to. And then there are also some induced sleep disruptors like caffeine, especially now we're not metabolizing as fast. We talked about alcohol as well. So no caffeine for 6 to 8 hours before you go to bed.
Wow.
So your last cup of coffee should be tea. I think you could have rooibos tea, etc. after that. Remember, chocolate's got caffeine in it. Hot chocolates get caffeine. Coke is full of caffeine. Alcohol is a sleep disruptor. Medications, certain medications are sleep disruptors. So, often we do have to reach for half a sleeping pill or whatever, but remember that the quality of your sleep is reduced as soon as it's pharmacologically induced sleep. So natural sleep is better. Not always possible, but it is best.
It is best. Okay. Yeah, and it's something that's so important. And we feel brand new and we get a good night's sleep. Yeah. We really do. Yeah. And one of my favorite ways to exercise is to go for a beach walk with a friend. And I love it. And again, I don't know what I love more is the exercise with just the time with a friend, just talking about life and being together. Can we talk about this last pillar that you mentioned? And it's this one of emotional well-being and community. I live on the beach in Umdloti and I see these groups of women talking. Yeah. This morning I was staying in Melkbos and I walked past these two ladies. They were yakking and I actually commented, ladies, it sounds like you're solving the problems of the world. And they laughed and they replied, we're trying. But what part does this emotional support play for us as women?
We've mentioned that sort of Harvard study before where they found that the number one underlying prompter of happiness in a long, happy life is actually community and feeling like you have a purpose and you have a place. And more than ever in the perimenopause, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we need a like-minded gaggle of geese with us. So community is so important. Having, either your church community or a sports community or just a really good group of friends is incredibly helpful for our well-being. Stress management. This also falls in the same category of emotional health. We have to learn to manage stress. We have to learn to create boundaries, shed the things that are no longer necessary. I've taken myself off so many committees. And ironically, you think, oh no, but you need to be on all these committees because you're now an old fogey, you've got all the experience. Actually, no thank you. The youngsters can come in. It's no longer serving me. Meditation, breathing exercises, time in nature is a very good stress reliever. Things like saunas, very good for stress. And we really are in a general era of overwhelm, but also in our time of our lives of overwhelm, not quite coping, teenagers causing trouble, husbands causing trouble, parents terminally ill. So this is a time where we need to set boundaries and we really need to shed what's no longer necessary.
Oh, that sounds liberating.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're at a time in life where we stop caring that much what people think about. We have to do what everyone expects. Yeah. And so we can start to do that and go, well, what is bringing me life? What is important? And focusing on those things. And I loved this conversation and I thought it would feel overwhelming, like a tick box of things that I had to do. But even as we were talking, I thought about just a few things that I can put into place, and small changes I can make. And honestly, just things I can be aware of. Yeah. When I'm making my food choices, when I'm planning my day. This was so helpful. So as we wrap up, what is your parenting pearl for today?
Well, it's not really a parenting.
Oh, it's not a parenting pearl.
It is a parenting pearl because if we're not going through a good time, our parenting is going to be absolutely useless. So my pearl for today is that diet and exercise are very effective medications, especially for this time of life. And remember, we don't want to be skinny during this time. Skinny means weak bones, weak muscles. Strong is the new skinny. And strong is what we want to be during the perimenopause.
That's so good. It made me think of, I do a little gym class twice a week with two friends. And the other day our trainer said to my friend, you have legs like a rugby player.
Yeah.
And she was so, as a woman, she was like offended.
Yeah.
But he said, I don't mean it. You're so strong.
So strong.
And so I need to go home and tell her exactly what you've said, Claudia, that this is what we need to be during menopause is strong and not to worry so much about the skinny and the body shape and those kinds of things. It's about our health. It's about our longevity. Yeah. So thank you so much for this. And thank you for everything you've shared. I know there's so much that you, as those who are listening, can put into practice. And if you are a guy out there, how you can support the woman in your life in what she is going through in this season. And I just hope that it really does help you to thrive. But as always, please remember that the wisdom and the facts and the research that we share in this podcast does not replace a scheduled visit to a healthcare practitioner. So if you're concerned, if you want a personalized plan in terms of thriving during menopause, please make an appointment with your gynecologist or with your doctor and seek professional advice. But thank you for joining us, and thank you, Claudia, for all of this incredible wisdom that you've shared with us today.
Lovely. Thank you to the listeners. Press that subscribe button. Thank you, guys.
See you soon.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.